Hi everyone, for this video it is going to be about looking at ancient Rome and ancient Greek similarities and differences in their architecture. But before we go into the real thing, let me show you and explain a little of their types of, you can say their designs and some terms to know. So for the first one that we have here is the Tuscan. The Tuscan comes from the Romans and is seen as like the basic column just because, as you can see in comparison to the rest of the columns, the Tuscan doesn't really have a design or a pattern. The next one is the Doric. So that one comes from the Greeks. Ionic also comes from the Greeks as well as Corinthian. But the last one, composition, comes from the Romans. So here we have the type of capitals. So the capitals, you can say it like they're the heads or the tip of the columns. But notice how they're a little different in each one. We can get into that later. Although there were five major columns, three of them were the most used from the Greek and the Romans. And they have an order. So the order goes from Doric to Ionic to Corinthian, being the last one. The first one, being Doric, was invented around the 6th century, comes from the name Dorian tribes. The Greek-speaking people who, according to the tradition, invaded the mainland of Greece following the collapse of the Mycenaean world around 1100 BC. Many compare the Doric order to the Egyptian architecture. In the Greek architecture world, the Mycenaean is important because of its carvings and patterns and figures, and began the rich tradition of decorative sculptures for which Greek architecture is rightly famous for. The second one, being Ionic, was developed during the mid-6th century BCE, was named after the Ionians who fled the Dorian invasions and settled along the west coast of what is now known Turkey. The last one, being Corinthian, was invented in the 5th century BC. The Corinthian order is named for the Greek city-state of Corinth, which was connected to the period of the late classical period from 430 to 323 BC. The one favorite type of column used for the Romans was the Corinthian order. The Romans were great innovators and made new designs and structures like the basilica, the triumph arch, monumental aqueducts, amphitheaters, and many, many more. The main difference between Greek and Roman architecture is that the Romans were more decorative. For example, the Arch of Septimus Severus in Rome from 203 CE. The Romans created one of the columns known as composition columns, which is a capital mixed with Ionic and Corinthian. Also coming from Doric, the Tuscan column is a column that has a smaller capital, more slender shaft without flutes and molded base. The column was known in the Renaissance period when it started in 1300s. An interesting fact about the Romans is that to make their columns, they would prefer to use concrete. Unlike the Greeks, they would use different types of materials like timber, stone, brick, but for the Greeks, they preferred marble. Also including, the Romans would make the columns with a meaning, and it would either be within the design, like carving their gods with the cement. And another main difference from Greeks and Romans is that the Greeks did not use any arches. Not completely zero, but it was very rare. So here are some similarities of Parthenon and Pantheon. So Parthenon was done in Greece around 126 AD, and Pantheon was done in Rome around 447 through 438 BC. So in the picture, Parthenon, the one that was done in Greece, was done as a Doric order supported with Ionic columns. So in this picture, Pantheon, the one that was done in Rome, was adopted from the Greek architecture, but instead it was concrete dome with Corinthian columns. Although they are like kind of far apart, they do have a lot of differences, but they also have similarities, like the columns, like what they used and how they look.